Good girl, that's a good spot. Good girl. Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the garden question and answer video that I do pretty much every Sunday. You can ask gardening questions down in the comment section below the video, and that's where I pick from each week. There are always a lot of great questions, and so I thank everyone for participating. I can't possibly answer every question, but I try to pick ones that are kind of relevant to whatever's going on, or maybe ones from recent videos, that kind of thing, or questions that I've seen repeatedly that I haven't answered yet. So just picking them that way. All right, let's see, a few things before I jump into questions. One is there'll be details on the open house at the end of this video. So we're having an open house on June 22nd, and I'll have the details I know so far at the end of the video if you're interested in that. And the Learn to Garden video series I announced last week, there's a $60 discount for the entire month of May. And I put up a video last week. I shot the tool video this week. I haven't gotten it up yet. Maybe by the time you're watching this, it'll be up. I don't think so, though. Probably the first of the week. And then Steph is going to be doing 2 design videos for the, she's a landscape design major and did landscape design. So she's going to be doing a couple videos for the Learn to Garden video series. So they'll be going up on there. But there is a $60 discount. Just the word learn is the code you use to get that. And it's over on the website, HortTube.com. Question number 1 this week: won't the wood chips raise the paths up? This person used rubber mulch because they don't want their paths ultimately to be raised up by mulching over and over and over again. It will ultimately raise up, but very, very slowly, because wood chips break down so quickly. So they're raised up right this minute, but in 6 months, they'll be virtually flat back down to the ground again. It just breaks down so quickly. But ultimately, I am adding a little bit of humus, each time that stuff breaks down. The thing about this question is I actually want my paths higher than the beds. I mean, I go into lots of gardens where the paths have eroded down over time from foot traffic, and they've had other stepping stones. I'm standing in the patio. I only put a few hours into this so far, but I'm working on the patio here. Hopefully I'll be done with this week. It, of course, jumped up to 90 degrees as soon as I started laying stones back here. But I go into lots of gardens where the paths, they're either stepping stones or grass or nothing. And because of the foot traffic, they've actually sunk down enough where then the water starts to find that as the path through the garden, and then it sinks them more. Maybe you're not even noticing it's happening, but that's where the water ends up going, is into your path. So I want my paths up where, it can rain heavy and I can walk out here and the paths are high and dry, and the water is going into the beds where the plants are. So not the opposite. I don't want water running out of here. I'm trying to get the water into the ground. Anything that falls from the sky, we just can't buy very much rain here right this minute. It's so strange. I mean, seeing flooding all over the place. We just cannot buy any rain. It'll dribble drop for a little while, and then it's just kind of done. But anyway, I ultimately want my paths higher than my beds. So that's part of it as well. And some people that will do these wood chip paths like this will actually, once it breaks down into humus, will actually rake that stuff up into the beds. You'll see vegetable gardeners doing this a lot now. And I have wood chips in between my rows and my vegetable garden over there, and that will become my compost for next time. And then I'll wood chip the other areas in between. So it rotates back and forth. Okay, there you go. So somebody said, doesn't piling wood chip mulch under the oak hurt its roots? Because I had moved the last of the wood chips. I should call this Wood Chips with Jim Putnam, this channel. I had moved the pile of wood chips back here right in front of this a large oak, but it was only covering, if you're drawing a little pie, out from, the oak, it was a very narrow 15 degrees or something from the roots, on that tree where that wood chips were piled up. And if you were gonna pile something up on roots, it would be wood chips. They're fluffy and got lots of air in them, and they're not packed, they're not super compact. Soils and things like that would definitely damage the roots really quickly, but putting a little pile of wood chips on a little piece of the pie of the roots of that tree for a week and a half or 2 weeks isn't going to do any problem. In fact, it was probably rooting up from underneath into the wood chip pile. But I got rid of the rest of that pile, and and that was where the question came from about raising the paths. Was I used the rest of the wood chips from back there in that corner in a video earlier this week. So somebody said, what are we going to fertilize our annuals with? I just use whatever organic fertilizer. If I have flower tone or plant tone or any of them, if my annuals need fertilizer, I'll just throw out that, you know, organic fertilizer, whatever I have on hand from the spring fertilizing. You know, but I fertilized back at the end of February, early March, everything. And I haven't fertilized anything since. And I base fertilizing on need and not on, you know, it's Tuesday, so it's time to fertilize. You know, if my annuals are performing well, and our annuals out in the front garden have really jumped out very quickly. The perennial border that we redid in the back, or turned this annual border into a perennial border, this stuff's already this tall. These little salvia that we had planted, pentas over here, Steph deadheaded them, so they're about the same height as when we put them in the ground, but I can see new growth coming from the bottom of them. If I see them growing and performing, I won't be fertilizing. So that's for me, is I'm trying to fertilize as little as possible. I'm trying to give this, I've given it all the inputs it needs with compost and the wood chips breaking down and the mulch breaking down and the bark that I've used to keep the annual beds from compacting down so much. I put all the work in. I don't see why I would need to hammer them with fertilizer going forward. So we use very little ongoing fertilizer during the season. If you follow along with the channel, the more nitrogen, especially nitrogen, you're throwing at things, throwing at these plants, the more susceptible they're going to be to insect and disease problems. The more you push these plants, the more you're going to invite problems. So I'd slow and steady. But again, you will find that you'll have an underperforming annual bed somewhere. Or maybe it's the first year you've put it in the ground, and then you can fertilize them. But you can use flower tone or some sort of, hopefully some sort of organic fertilizer. You know, I don't want to throw a bunch of synthetic fertilizer at it, you know, every 7 or 10 days, you know, and I wouldn't do that. See, the thing is, I could probably push these annuals a little bit harder earlier on than I'm pushing them. They're growing like crazy, but I could probably push them and get them looking fuller. And I mean, if I was all in on impressing you guys on YouTube, I wouldn't be standing on a half-finished patio, and I'd be hammering these annuals and vegetable plants and everything else with fertilizers and chemicals and everything else, just trying to make it always look polished and always look, you know, whatever. But the response to all that fertilizer would also be, you know, to have to be spraying other things as well, because I'd be inviting all kinds of pests into the garden. Okay, let's see. Somebody has wilting leaves on their Golden Falls redbud in the afternoon. Should they be worried? Normally, I'd say, you know, when you plant something, if you're getting wilting leaves in the afternoon, let's say my hydrangea back here, I think you might be able to see is, you know, starting to bloom, my Dear Dolores hydrangea. That thing will get wilting leaves in the late afternoon in July and August for sure. I mean, I have to have it in enough sun to keep it that full. But, you know, if I put it in any less sun, I'm not going to get flowers on it. If I put it in more sun, it's just absolutely going to get cooked. So there's a balancing act. It'll wilt a little in the afternoon. But that's July or middle June, maybe. It shouldn't be. I would think if something was wilting in May, that's not a good sign for the summer. I think you may have it in too much sun. It may be that, you know, my Golden Falls redbud over here is in a good amount of sun, but it is in the shade by probably 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it has things planted around it that are protecting its roots. So, you know, take a look at it. It would concern me if it was doing it in May. You know, that seems like so early in the year that what's July going to be like if the thing's miserable in May? So if you were telling me it was in July, I would have gone, it'll fight through it, and next year it'll be better off for it, and you can plant some other things around it. But May may be telling us that it's in too much shade, unless you've just planted it like a month ago, and then it's just wilting because it's not got any roots underneath it, and so it'll take time. So I don't know, you know, a lot of times I'm reading into, you know, the questions. If it's in part shade and it's wilting in the afternoon, it's just not established enough. If it's in a lot of sun and it's wilting in the afternoon, it may be concerning because it's only May. That's the way I'll answer that. So somebody said they're asking all their favorite YouTubers opinion on fertigation, injecting liquid fertilizer into lines. And they see it used on large scale. So we had fertigation in our greenhouse where we're doing rooted cuttings, doing liners production at my nursery. So once plants started getting some roots on them, you know, we could pump fertilizer through the irrigation lines. But you know, that was in a commercial space. You can do that, absolutely do that in a drip irrigation system. You can pump fertilizer through your drip irrigation system. Again, you know, I'll ask the question, do the plants need fertilizer? You know, in a nursery situation, I'm fertilizing them just with a lot of fertilizer because I'm trying to sell them as quick as possible. So I'm willing to take the fact that I'm also going to have to probably spray other things in order to manage, you know, pushing the plants that hard because I need to get the money for them. And plants in containers don't have access to all the micronutrients that your soil does. So, you know, once you have something up in a container and it's in just organic materials, it's going to exhaust nutrients in that organic material. So it's going to require ongoing fertilizing. But things in the ground don't necessarily require ongoing fertilizing. So again, you can absolutely hook up a fertigation system to a drip irrigation system in your garden, but you're probably then going to over-fertilize things and fertilize things for no reason. Okay, person wants to move 2 5 to 6 foot red twig dogwoods because they're larger than they thought. Can they move them now? Should they prune them back to 3 feet before the move? You can move them now. They're pretty tough plants, and you can prune them. Again, it's going to take a minute before they look normal again. So, you know, it would have been better back when they were dormant a couple months back. You could have probably done it back in February and as long as it was diggable in your area and not had to prune anything off of them, they'd have just hit the ground running right now. But at this point, when they're trying to put on all that new growth, you probably don't have to cut them back to 3 feet, but you're probably going to have to cut a little bit of new growth off of them. And then it's going to take a season or two for them to kind of normalize again. So, you know, I'll leave that up to you. But yeah, I'm still moving things. It's 90 degrees out here. And red twig dogwoods, you know, I don't think you'll end up ultimately hurting them. But you don't have to cut them back that far, but you will have to cut them back some to transition them easier. Forming and pruning. Somebody just said, can we do a video on shaping, forming, and pruning Japanese maples? Yes, we will at some point. We're have a couple friends and a couple of ideas on how to shoot that video, including Lynn Swanson, who was in the video that we did that beautiful garden up in North Raleigh. I think they do the pruning over at the J.C. Ralston Arboretum. So if I can get her in the video, I definitely would. The J.C. Ralston's Arboretum's symbol is a maple leaf. A Japanese maple leaf, and there's supposed to be no spot that you can stand in the Ralston and not see a Japanese maple in a line of sight. So there's a lot of them there, and they're in charge of pruning them. I'd love to do a video with them, or go up to Mr. Maple or something, and we'll do some video with them. I'd need to do some pruning on mine, and I could shoot the video and I could do the video. I've pruned plenty of Japanese maples, but why not bring in somebody that, you know, knows more to answer these questions? That's what I always think, and I get to learn in the process. So it's a win-win. It's a win-win-win. We get to travel, we get to learn. I get to learn something that day, and you guys get somebody that really is a professional at that particular thing. Okay. So somebody said they found confusing info on composting green or brown materials. So are wood chips green or brown? So when you building a compost pile, you need green materials. These are like grass clippings, leaves off of plants, anything that's literally green or is actively growing. It's got a lot of moisture content in it. And then browns can be leaves that have fallen off of trees. It can be wood chip, older wood chips, anything that's broken down a bit so already. Okay, so those two things together are what heat the compost pile up and get it going. You've got to have that moisture from those green things, and that can be food, can be part of that. you know, anything that is bringing moisture into the process. They wanted to know if wood chips are green or brown. They're both. That's what makes wood chips so great, is they're both, because it's the entire tree chipped up. So you've got the little twigs and leaves, and maybe it's the needles off the pine tree. It's every branch, and it's the entire trunk of the tree all the way down to the ground. And so you've got both types of material, and that's why you dump wood chips on your driveway and it's warm outside, that pile will immediately start smoking. It starts composting so fast. And so that's the beauty of them, is it's got both combined together. Now, with that said, if you dry those wood chips for some period of time, then they don't compost. They need some green material added back into them. They need some sort of nitrogen component added back into them in order to get them breaking down. So there is a point, though, you know, where the materials in that pile dry out if they haven't been piled up high enough. And so that's one of the issues with this bagged wood pallet mulch, or brown wood mulch that folks buy that are 4 for $10 bags or whatever. You can see that it's wood and it's been dyed brown or black or red or whatever. That wood was some part of the lumber industry, either chipped up pallets or byproduct of actually making 2x4s or 2x6s or whatever. And then they're dyeing that material, but that material was dried before it went, you know, through the lumber mill. It was dried some, so it doesn't have a lot of moisture content in it. That's why it lays there and doesn't break down very quickly. So that's the difference. It's still wood, just like the wood chips that the camera's sitting on right now. But my wood chips the camera's sitting on are still wet, and they still have all that material. You know, they have everything it needs in there to compost. And that's the difference between that brown mulch you're buying. You know, why it doesn't break down very quickly. And the wood chips break down so much faster. Okay, there you go. It's just not dry. Let's see. Next up, the weekly garden planner still has a $20 off discount down below all of the videos, and it's just planner is the code for that. And you can July will be up on there this week, and we've already started shooting August, and so we're trying to stay way ahead on the weekly garden planner. But that there's a $60 discount on the Learn to Garden video series and a $20 discount on the weekly garden planner. The weekly garden planner, you can just follow along month by month, and follow along what the thoughts that we have during the year on each week. And it's broken down into weeks on how we maintain the garden and add to the garden and plan for the garden and all of those kinds of things. Okay. And then the next question was, is dyed mulch made from wood pallets? I somehow skipped ahead and answered that. Some is wood pallets, and again, some of it's just, the tree is round and they're cutting rectangles, or squares out of it. So you have extra wood material, in the lumber making, in the lumber cutting industry. And so it's just a good use for it is they dye it and then put it in these bags and sell it. Again, it has been dried though. It's been, not completely dried, but a little bit dried out so that it doesn't break down quite as quickly. That's what I noticed about that mulch is it just, I saw it yesterday up here at a shopping center out last evening having dinner, and it's just this, brown chipped up wood material, and again, it could be chipped up pallets. I don't think there's this many pallets to fill up every Lowe's and Home Depot parking lot across America with bags that are 4 for $10. So I don't think it's definitely not all wood pallets. So I think a lot of it's just coming from byproducts from making lumber. But that material is all out in the parking lots and all over the place where it seems to float. It doesn't grab a hold of itself very well, and it doesn't seem to break down all that readily. It covers the ground, and it's organic. So, there you go. Let's see. Somebody said they noticed white mold under their mulch. What should they do? A couple people chimed in on that. That means your garden is alive. That's beneficial fungi colonizing in your mulch and breaking your mulch down and making those nutrients available for your plants. And so your garden is, Holly's gonna want to go in here. I may change the camera angle as well. but your garden is alive. Congratulations. So that little pile of wood chips I had back there was back there for maybe a week and a half while we were doing some other things. And I stuck a fork in it, flipped it over, and it was just full of life. Absolutely chock-a-block full of life. Everywhere in this garden is. Hopefully that's what's happening in your guys' gardens. If you're keeping the soil covered and a little bit of moisture helps. It's been so dry, that hasn't been helpful, but that's what that is that any of those material, when you flip the mulch over or you're getting mushrooms, all those kinds of things are indications that your soil is coming to life or is very, very alive. Now you can see the Golden Falls red bud, and it has already grown back to the ground. I cut it this far off the ground in a video back at February or March before it leafed out, and it's already back down on the ground. That thing just grows so fast. It's wild how fast that thing grows. Okay, so somebody said about zone changes, will some plants suffer more? I.e. his hemlocks have seemed to have it worse, as it's been warmer. Yeah, there's a lot of, certainly conifers are going to, be a big issue. I talked about in last week's video that the zone changes don't necessarily mean you're not still going to get the same low temperatures you've had in the past, but the overall temperature has warmed. The nighttime temperatures have warmed dramatically in the last little bit. And is this going to have a negative impact on some plants? Yes. And there's a lot of conifers that we're just pushing the southern boundaries on. Things like hemlocks. Hemlock's native range is, the Appalachia and the high mountains, and then up to into the northeast and up into Canada, and that's kind of the same with Eastern Arborvitae. But we've always tried them here, and with some success. But they're going to be the plants that are going to they're going to struggle the worst. Are going to be ones where we've taken them out of their native range and pushed them pretty far south. They're already under probably some stress, and where you're going to see that. What you're going to see is things like mites, aphids, things being able to attack them easily, and them having no defenses against things attacking them. Will we do a soil test at the new garden? Yes, we're supposed to go there this week and shoot a video, but I think it'll probably be next week before I get to get down there. We're going to do a design video, paint some lines on the ground, put the drone up, show you what your initial thoughts are on designing that garden. But yeah, I'm probably going to get a soil test while I'm there just to see. And I don't take a soil test so that I can get down in the trenches and get the calcium just right. I don't do that at all. But I would like to know if there's something that's just off the charts high or really literally off the charts low. I would like to know that information. But if everything's within a reasonable range, I won't do anything. We'll just keep the ground covered in organic material and fertilize it once a year, just like we do here. And most everything will be fine. And if the plant's not fine in those conditions, it either won't get planted or we'll realize it pretty quickly and we'll eliminate it. And so that way we're not fighting against. I'm not trying to swim upstream, in order to plant a garden. I don't want to be doing that. So somebody said they're rooming. Okay, this is a question I get all the time, so I just want to, I'll throw it out here because it'll answer a lot of people's questions. They planted a Roman candle podocarpus in the fall, but it doesn't have a lot of new growth. It doesn't have any new growth this spring. What's up? That's normal. If you plant something in the fall, it may not grow a whole lot the first season. Sometimes something will hit the ground running, but that's a particularly slow plant. So you have the combo of having planted it in the fall, and then also it's a very slow growing plant. Our Roman candle is it's going from this big to this big, while everything else in this garden is going from this big to this big. So it's just a slow growing plant. And again, sometimes we get lucky and we put something in the ground and it just goes bonkers, and congratulations, sometimes that happens. And then other times you'll put something in the ground, and as long as it's not going backwards, sometimes it takes a minute for something to get anchored in well enough and get going. It may be that it was abnormally wet in that space during the winter, or dry, or something. Something just didn't get the engine started on it. But as long as it's not declining, don't worry about it. Okay, so somebody said just it would be helpful to have a video and a checklist for preparing a new site after construction. That video's coming. I've had this on the list for a while to do just a beginning to, to the start line video. And if you own the Learn to Garden video series, that's kind of what that video series is about, is starting a garden, and then just the details of starting a garden. And there's more coming. Again, there's 2 design videos coming from stuff this month, but that's what a lot of the Learn to Garden video series is about, and it's $60 off this month. Okay, somebody down at the beach in North Carolina got a soil test. Their pH was 6.5 in the front and 5.5 in the back. The soil test recommended they use lime. Is this futile? And will wood chips gradually change the pH anyway? Okay, so here's a few things. I don't know why you would add lime to a pH that's 5.5 or 6. I mean, what do they think you're growing? I mean, do they think you're growing corn or something else? Like all the plants that you put in the ground down there. This is the thing when you get. This was a North Carolina Extension soil test, and so a lot of times they're aiming something toward farming. So in the farm we want the pH to be 6.5 for whatever reason. But a pH of 5.5 literally is the pH of the soil in eastern North Carolina, and so fighting that would be futile. And then so wood chips change the pH. So you can take pine needles, which have a pH of something like 3 when they're on the tree. I mean, really crazy low pH, and compost them, and the finished compost will compost towards 7. Almost everything composts toward neutral. Doesn't change the actual pH of your soil though at all. These pHs were established over tens of thousands of years of basically most of the soils the rock has some lime in them. And if you look on a pH map of the country, you'll see that most of the areas with low pHs are places where it rains readily, and the places where the pHs are high, it rains infrequently or quite a bit less, and so the lime just hasn't washed out of the soil in the same way. With some exceptions, there are places in Florida that have very high pHs because the limestone is exposed. The limestone is very close to the surface. So you're not going to actually, my point here is you're not actually going to ever affect your pH all that much. You can take sulfur and try to drive your pH down, but it's always just going to come right, it's always going to come right back up. You can lime, test your soil 2 years later, and it probably will not have moved at all. We get a lot of rain here, so the conditions are going to be that the rain is probably going to do the same thing with the lime that you're throwing down. And there's no point. The 6.5 pH in the front, you could grow anything you ever wanted to grow. Almost every nutrient is available at 6.5. And if you go back and look at the video I did on why pH is so important, 6.5 is where I landed there, saying that is the optimum pH where literally everything in this garden can grow. Are blueberries the most happy in 6.5? No, they'd prefer to be down around 5. Are, hellebores or boxwoods, which will take higher pHs, are they the most happy at 6.5? I don't know, but that's close enough because every nutrient is available around 6.5. Around 5.5, you're probably losing a little more phosphorus to the plants, but it won't matter. It just won't matter. Everything that grows down there will grow well for you in this soil. And all of these recommendations for putting out trying to micromanage your soil is not going to go well. And if you overdo anything, it's really gonna be problematic. So that's enough words on that. But I get the soil test basically for the pH, and I'll get the soil test from down there. At the new garden, but I'm not going to try to micromanage my soil in any way, shape, or form. I'll plant plants that are appropriate for those soils, and then again, not trying to swim upstream doing this. Okay, so somebody has Calycanthus that's colonizing. Should they remove the suckers for the general health of the original plant, or is this simply personal preference? There is a point where something colonizes and then you can't get air movement in it and it starts to choke itself out some. There's a forsythia next to me over here in the neighbor's garden. Calycanthus is native, but that forsythia, if you look up under it, it's just a colony underneath there, and it never performs. The whole plant never performs all that well. So for me, you know, a small amount of colonizing would be okay, but there probably is a point where there's just too many things trying to be maintained by the same root system, and you don't get as many flowers. The plant's overall less vigorous. It sets itself up without any air movement through the middle of it to have things to be able to hide in it. So yeah, for me, I'm not going to let it colonize all that much. A lot of our native shrubs do, though. I mean, the calycanthus definitely does. You know, beautyberries do, clethra, itea. You know, weirdly, a lot of our native shrubs ultimately do this. Will grow in colonies like this. I would like to keep the colony at a reasonable size. The other thing is, I don't want to lose control of something over time. You know, if you watched it for some period of years, and then like 10 years later went, hey, I should have probably not let that happen, that's when the job is really going to be hard. It's much easier when the plant's small to go out there with a shovel and just literally chop a few of the new suckers, you know, right down below the ground, and then just walk away. Somebody said the rhododendrons were alive one day and dead the next. Do I have any insight? When you see something die really super fast, it's usually root related in some way. So it could be voles, you know, went in and, you know, chewed off the layer, the little cambium layer down at the bottom. Could be squirrels that would do something like that. Could be rabbits that would do something like that. But likely, in all likelihood, something got cut off from the top of it really quick. It probably wouldn't die from the top down, you know, all that quickly. But so it's root related, but I couldn't tell you, you know, what it was. The other thing rhododendrons are known for is getting, you know, root rot diseases. So there's a lot of breeding in rhododendrons now to prevent Phytophthora root rot and some of the other issues that rhododendrons get. So I just didn't add that. I'm going to add that to the list. Phytophthora root rot, voles, some sort of root damage. Phytophthora root rot is root damage as well. That's the only thing that'll just kind of cut the plant off real quick, and the top just go wilt and die that fast. So somebody said they were sick and could not plant their Professor Sargent camellia. They're over in 7B in Southeast Tennessee. Is it best to now wait for the fall? No, you're in the 7B on the other side of the mountains over there, or in the mountains. I would definitely get that thing in the ground sooner the better, because it's going to be slightly marginal in your area. So the faster you can get that Professor Sargent some roots under it and get any kind of establishment of it, the better. Again, you know, you're better off planting something that's marginal in the summer than you are in the fall, just because it gets a little bit more time in the ground. You'll just have to watch it a little bit closer than you would have if you'd have planted it 2 months ago. But I would definitely get that thing in the ground. So if somebody said if the root flare of their tree is buried a couple inches below the soil, should they simply expose it or dig it up and replant it higher? They're in zone 6A, thank you for including your zone. Sometimes it matters, and like it doesn't matter on this question, but it's always helpful to have it there in some way or another, because that 7B Tennessee thing, if I'd have just gone Professor Sargent camellia and didn't know that they were in an area, I get that it's 7B, but they tend to have more winds over there on the other side. It gave me a little piece of information to help answer that question, because I may have said wait till fall if you were in Mobile, Alabama. That would have been a better choice. But in Southeast Tennessee, where I know the thing could be slightly marginal, I told them to get it in the ground. So that's where that can be helpful, even if you think it's not helpful. Okay, so let's see. If you can dig it up, if it's something that was newly planted and you know that it got planted too deep, I would definitely dig it up and raise it up. You don't have to dig something completely out of the ground. Sometimes you can take a shovel and work from side to side to side and throw some soil underneath it, you know, and raise it in place. But at a minimum, I'd go back there and see if I could find a little bit more of that flare and kind of dig out, you know, away from it. You know, don't create a little cup right at the base of the tree. See if you can go out just a bit further with it. But if it's new enough, then I would absolutely, dig it up and plant it higher. Somebody wanted an update on our Big Daddy hydrangea. It looks great. It looks great back there, about to flower. There's a little bit of B-roll of that. So somebody planted 500 plus daffodils. It's too many to tie down, meaning they want to take the foliage on their daffodils. I don't know if you can see these down here. I guess you can. You know, you can roll that foliage up and tie it off while it wait for it to die back to the ground. Ours started to die back this week, so I'm just going to leave ours be. It's too many to tie down. Can they cut them halfway down? That's what Dr. Armitage does, and that's what we did with the tulips out front. I would never have the patience to sit here and roll every one of these daffodils up. I have no patience for that kind of thing whatsoever. So if I was going to do anything, I'd come up through here and take about a third off the top of all of these. You know, leave them long enough after they flower that they've really had some good time with that foliage. But once it starts to die back a little bit, if you want to cut them back a third or a half, you're not going to hurt these daffodils at that point. But rolling them up oh my gosh, I could never. I could do a few and then I'd be like, let's start cutting them. Let's see. Somebody has deformed peonies on tall stems. They have larger leaves. They're in Pennsylvania. They haven't bloomed yet. So should they remove them so they can't contaminate other peonies? What's going on? I actually don't know. There are fungal diseases that peonies get that will deform the flowers and deform the flower buds. And then the other thing that could happen, I could answer this in some complicated way like this. And then the other thing that could happen is you can get frost on your peonies as the flower buds have started to form, and that will deform the flower buds and cause weird issues as well. So I don't know which it is. There may be somebody locally that you could take a photo of it and go to a local garden center. Maybe it's something in your area that I just don't know about. But there are, again, I know that there are fungal diseases. The peonies there's a long list of things they actually get. Sometimes they can be planted too deep. I don't know when these went in the ground, but ones that are planted too deep, that stay too wet in the winter, can come up with deformed or weird looking foliage. Then there's fungal problems, and then again, frost. Late freeze or frost could be an issue as well, but that one's not really possible for me to answer, without seeing it, having been able to observe it, in any kind of way. So somebody said half of their perennial grass died in the clump. Should they divide out the dead plant material they have that has started growing? You can just give it time. A lot of times that, it probably, root rotted over the winter is why I talk about grasses a lot of times. Grasses just don't like to stay wet in their dormant state in the winter time. And sometimes in our ornamental gardens, they do. And you'll lose parts of the clump will rot during the winter time where they've stayed too wet. So you can do either. You can pop that grass out of the ground, divide it into two pieces, clean it up a bit, replant it back in the ground, or you can just give it time. Grasses, even as awake as this garden is, the grasses in my neighborhood aren't completely and totally up and filled in all that well. It may fill in better than you think it's going to fill in. That's what I'll say. Can you start a veggie garden without tilling? Yes, well, we don't till our vegetable garden at all, but when we started it, we did till it the first time. And so I would say that this would depend on where you're starting from. If it's new construction, you just moved into this house and they've been driving machines on it, you'll probably need to till it that first time and till some compost down in it a bit and see get it kind of, use a little shock therapy on it to get some compost down in the ground, and that would be helpful. If you're coming into it and it's been an area that's been under grass for a bunch of years and there hasn't really been any heavy equipment on it, you don't think it's all that compact, you might be able to get away with taking that grass out and just adding compost to the top layer, and then it gets incorporated as you plant each plant. I don't know that your vegetable garden is going to perform its best the first year doing that. But so for me, I say tilling is killing. We don't do any tilling here, except for that first time I put that vegetable garden in, I did till it. And so, and the annual beds here, the annual beds that went in the initial time that I did them, I did till. So one time I kind of shock the system, get some compost down in the ground, start to wake this soil up a bit, and then from there it's no-till. It's all no-till farming from there. But I do want to get it going to start with. So how much time should you give perennials, grasses, lavenders to emerge after a wet Pacific Northwest winter before you give up? Usually about the 15th of May for me here. It might be a hair later for you there, but we would always, you know, some things like lantana, if it stays cool overnight, you know, through April, it can be, even in a container nursery, if they're outside, it can be May before they start waking up. And so there's, a lot of it depends on the year, on a year-to-year basis, what I would do. And I know it's been cool up there as well. So normally I would say mid-May, and then, you know, they'd be gone for me. But if it's continued to stay wet and continued to stay cool, I mean, you can wait until, you know, the end of May if you don't have plants, you know, plans for that, for those spaces. But yeah, some years things are just, you know, will be interesting. How slow that they can wake up. We used to have people bring in their crepe myrtles. Now we got crepe myrtles leafing out in March everywhere, all over the neighborhood. But we used to get them returned at the garden center in April. People would just march in with their dead crepe myrtles, and we'd tell them to go home and replant them because they weren't dead. They were just always late coming out. And now, you know, again, the much warmer nights we're having, you know, less cold, late winter we're having, they all leaf out much earlier than they used to. Somebody has their gardenias are yellowing after they planted them. They're in neutral soil in northeast Alabama. Should they fertilize them with hollytone? So knowing your pH is around 7, if you want to use hollytone, and which has some sulfur in it, which I talked about earlier, it will help temporarily, perhaps. I don't know how neutral is, but if it's on the 6 point something side of, you know, that's you. With the gardenia yellowing, you can get several different versions of gardenia yellowing. So when my gardenias are about to flower, and they will certainly lose some of the older leaves when they're setting flower buds. In drier years, which we're having right now, that leaf loss can get to be quite a bit more. So that's old leaves in the old part of the plant. If it's yellowing in the newer parts of the leaves, that generally is some sort of nutrient deficiency, some root-borne issue caused by some sort of nutrient not being available to the plant, likely iron with the gardenia, because your pH is you know, hair high for them. And the iron is more locked up or not available. So yes, you can try to use hollytone, but again, your pH is just going to come, you know, racing right back up. And if your pH is 7, you know, gardenias may not be the thing for you. If your pH is 6.5 or lower, you know, down to 4.5, where, you know, gardenias dream to be, you know, down around 5 probably, then, you know, that's just kind of perfect for them. So people don't like to hear when I say don't try to grow the wrong, you know, don't try to force plants necessarily into some spaces. So, but again, gardenia yellowing in the newer growth is typically it's related to some sort of root related issue. That can be where they were overwatered and roots got damaged, or it could be, again, your pH related issue with your iron. But if it's in the old growth, that's just kind of normal gardenia behavior. If it's extreme, then it was just dry while it was trying to set flower buds. A couple more, and then I'll talk about the open house. Somebody has some tree-form Japanese maples. They're thinning, so they want to prune them to fatten them up. Should they do it after they bloom? Yeah, you can do it after they bloom, and that's kind of ideal. Ligustrum are invasive, so your Japanese ligustrum, Chinese ligustrum, you know, they're invasive, and so pruning them after they flower is a good idea anyway. Some people are allergic to the flower. Steph's actually allergic to the ligustrum flowers, and of course they flower for a month here, and they smell. They're sweet to the point of being stinky, really, which is true with some, you know, good portion of white flowers do that. But that I'm just looking at this giant ligustrum that's back here in the neighbor's yard. It's 40 feet tall back there. You can't prune that one, but I would encourage everyone who has ligustrum to prune them after they flower, regardless, because it will prevent them from producing seed later in the year. And yes, that will help hopefully thicken your older tree-formed ones up. So somebody asked, what are tomato varieties? what tomato varieties we're growing this year. Well, we always grow Bronze Torch. It's our absolute favorite. We bought 0 tomato seeds this year. We used the existing ones that we had. I put it on the screen in the video when they went in the other day, and I'll do it right now. Here's the varieties that we're growing this year, but we always grow Bronze Torch, our absolute favorite tomato. Not the least expensive seed you'll ever buy, but we had an extra packet from last year, so I didn't have to buy them this year. There's only 10 seeds in a pack, and it's $7 or something for 10 seeds, which is pretty high for seed. But they're the best tomato. It's by far and away, to me, the best tomato I've ever eaten. It's small, bronze-colored tomato that tastes like a tomato. Amazing, amazing. Plant breeding, as good as it is to prevent some things, sometimes we don't seem to take flavor into account. It's the same thing with like strawberries. I mean, the strawberries that we ate as kids are not, these new strawberries are not those. These strawberries produce pretty strawberries, but they don't taste the same. But they have longer shelf lives. So, that's a lot of the breeding is for making sure it's shelf stable. Okay, so let's talk about the June. So somebody asked, and this is how I'll set up the June open house. Somebody said June 22nd is my birthday. Can I get in for free? Yes, you can absolutely get in for free because everybody's going to get in for free. We're not charging anything for this. I'm not trying to make money on people coming and looking at the garden here in Raleigh. But we're going to be open on June 22nd from 8 until 3 in the afternoon. We will have Soil Cube is giving us some small bags. The small bags of Soil Cube. We'll have Soil Cube giveaways. We're going to have plants giveaways from Southern Living Plant Collection, Encore Azaleas, Better Boxwood is sending some plants. We'll have some knee pads to give away. We're going to have 2 Pro Pluggers. Pro Pluggers sending us a couple Pro Pluggers to give away. And so I'm still working on that. So not only is it not going to be, you're not going to be charged, you're also going to have the potential to win some things. It will be in-person winning things only. I don't want to be shipping anything. So we'll just have giveaways every few hours. You may want to think about, it's be hot that day, but you may want to think about coming a little later because if it's crowded, my neighbors will be fine with everyone being here, but we're on a dead-end road, so I'll talk more about parking as we get a little bit closer to it and, throw every other detail out. But the details are, it's June 22nd from 8 to 3, Raleigh, North Carolina. And we will, again, be giving things away and not charging for you to come at all. And you can come and walk around the garden. Steph is making tags for a lot of the plants. So some things will be tagged, so you won't have to ask, questions. We'll be here to answer questions, but you won't, hopefully that will take care of some of the questions, having tags on some of the plants. And what were a couple other things I'm sure I was going to say. We will have t-shirts for sale. So the only, if you want to, you can buy a t-shirt while you're here. We're going to have 3 new designs. That'll be a thing too. So we'll have six t-shirts. T-shirts are available over on the website as well. If you're interested in a t-shirt. And there's going to be 2 that say HortTube with Jim Putnam. One has a silhouette of holly on it. So excited about that t-shirt that's coming. And then there's a HortTube with Jim Putnam one and another one that will be a surprise when those come. But in the next couple of weeks, those will be available. So there'll be t-shirts to buy. Everything else is free, giveaways, that kind of thing. So excited to have folks come and take a look at the garden. And I got to cut this thing off because I got a patio to finish and part of a fence to build over here before you show up on June 22nd. So thanks for watching.